Hello there, my name is Taj, and these are my mocks and revamps for the LEGO Hero Factory Invasion from Below Heroes. A few of the minifigures are slightly modified. They all have custom weapons, so I'll showcase all of them at the end of the video. But until then, let's just jump into it. So let's kick things off with the Stormer Freeze Machine. And here it is next to the original. Now, with the exception of the Evo Walker, I think all of the Wave 1 Invasion from Below mechs look pretty good. But a very strange quirk with this set in particular is the sheer amount of gunmetal gray, which up until this set had never really been a color associated with Stormer. With the exception of Stormer 3.0, Stormer has always been accented with silver and blue, so I swapped the gunmetal out for silver. I kept the same general hand design, except I used a white piece with silver fingers to kind of keep in with the color scheme. Something that isn't great on the original is the weapon. While the spitting function works fine and is kind of fun to fidget around with, I don't like how it's just kind of tacked onto the bottom of the arm. So the design I decided to replace it with just has it built into the arm, so his weapon is the arm, and I used these blue surge swords as just kind of an ice beam because I had them laying around and I thought it was a pretty cool use of those parts. I decided to put on the Stormer 2.0 nameplate on the torso just for a little hero synergy branding, which is something that's kind of universal with all the heroes. I'll explain more when I get to the other heroes. This right here is his weapon, which I will show off on the figure near the end of the video. But unfortunately, there is a significant downgrade. LEGO's official instructions tells you to build the mech like this, but I decided to not do that because I thought it was a little too goofy looking. But I see now that Giga Chad got one hell of a downgrade, and I apologize sincerely for that. But I do like the way these Star Wars pieces look on the upper legs. And I decided to remove the container on the backs of all of the mechs just because I thought they looked kind of unnecessary. But yeah, that's it for the Stormer Freeze Machine. Next up is the Inferno Blaze Machine. And in case you're curious, the name Blaze Machine is in fact a reference to Inferno's beta name, Billy Blaze. So this figure is actually not a revamp. It's not based on any pre-existing set, but just for the fun of it, here it is next to the Inferno Jet Machine, just so you can kind of get an idea of scale and see it next to, I guess, kind of the original, but we'll be talking about the Inferno Jet Machine later. And another thing I'd like to point out is that this mock is a bit rough. This is one of the older mocks, and I still think it looks fine enough, but it might get some slight modifications in the future. Most notably is this Technic lift arm in the back that's just a bit longer than it needs to be, but I don't have anything the correct length just kind of offhand right now, so this will do for now. But anyway, I'm pretty happy with the way that the bulk of this thing turned out. I like the shaping quite a bit, especially on the shoulders, and you can see kind of the branded plate there. And right here is the weapon, which is kind of a pseudo-replica Inferno 1.0 sword that, again, I'll show off later. I'm pretty happy with the way the legs turned out, because they're both pretty bulky and very stable. This thing's not falling over any time. I also really like the way these Raja printed pieces turned out, even though one of them is a little more faded than the other. I have the claw here because I had these spare Onua Master hammer pieces, and I think this looks pretty good. I think this is a pretty good claw design. And the flamethrower, which is actually using a 2.0 headgear with the gear piece actually cut off. One of the pieces of gear that I had all the way back then just kind of half snapped off, so I decided to finish the job and just kind of utilize that piece in any way I could. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the Inferno Blaze Machine. Next up, we have the Breeze Jet Machine. And I decided to give Breeze the flying machine because her breakout form was based around flying, and her name is Breeze, which kind of implies air-like qualities, so now she has the jet machine. And here it is next to the Inferno jet machine. So something that is actually a complete coincidence is the weapon. I just thought this would be a very cool looking energy sword, and then after I finished it I was like, oh yeah, Inferno jet machine also uses those pieces. So something that kinda works with the original, but still a little bit of the flaw, are the jets themselves. They look pretty good as flamethrowers, but when you turn them around and actually use them as jets, they're very small looking, and this thing just fell over because of that container, making it very back heavy. Part of the reason I didn't bother with them. But anyway, this doesn't look like it's gonna take up flight very easily, especially with something that's tanky. So not only did I slim down the Breeze jet machine, but I also significantly beefed up the jets themselves using these 2.0 engine pieces, some Technic wheels, and just a few pieces for detail. And I put the Breakout Breeze rocket boot on the back of the leg, just kind of both as a flight stabilizer and just cute little reference. I decided to use the Breeze 2.0 nameplate because it's gunmetal and fits in with those jets pretty well. But I think my favorite feature of this mech are these hooks on the knees, which allow her to kind of play a support role. So we'll take Stormer here. If he needs to be at another location, or if he's being surrounded, Breeze can just kind of swoop in, just kind of pick him up and hoist him away. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the Breeze jet machine. Next up is the Surge Speed Machine. So, as the name implies, this thing is designed to move around fast and run, and the main inspiration for that, like popped off, but anyway, the main inspiration for that are big running birds like emu. So that's the reason for the triple joints and the long legs, so he can just run around really fast. The arms use the Stormer XL swords, which I think look pretty good. They go with the color scheme pretty well. And the spear tip, just kind of as a jabbing weapon. And for ranged weapons, I decided to throw on the Surge 2.0 rifle because I thought it looked cool, and again, it's a nice little reference to an older Surge set. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to say about this. It's not that complicated, but I like it quite a bit. Next up, we have the Bulk Tank Machine. And I actually did store the weapons on the back of the mech. So I'm pretty sure Bulk ended up with the biggest of the mechs, at least in terms of bulk, which is quite fitting, and if you've been paying attention to this series, then you'll know that that's something that I've tried to keep consistent. I've got shoulder cannons with some flip-fire missiles attached because it is the tank machine, so it should have a lot of firepower. I like the way the brain attack shield looks on this thing, especially with these scout drones. Just gives a nice little bit of texture. So the legs may look a bit awkward, but they actually do function pretty well. They've got essentially the same standard articulation. The armor does kind of get in the way a little bit, and the ankles aren't great for posing, but you can still get it in a fairly realistic walking position. And in all honesty, I build pretty much everything with display in mind, so if something's a little hard to pose, but it can still pose, then that's absolutely fine in my book. I'm pretty happy with the way that this body armor just kind of creates a nice organic smooth look, like this is a big plate, or that the mech is made out of big plates. And the entire thing is actually built on top of an upside down CCBS torso, which I think turned out pretty good looking. I decided to use a drill for his left hand because Brain Attack Bulk had a drill and the only Bulk mech had a drill. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the Bulk Tank Machine. Next up is the Evo Walker. And here it is next to the puny little original that people keep insisting is a good set. I mean, this thing is literally called the Evo Walker, but thanks to its tripod design, it's really hard to get this thing in a very natural looking walking position. And the cockpit being attached to the back leg definitely does not help this problem. So with the power of modern engineering, I gave my Evo Walker a fourth leg, and now he can actually look like he's taking a step forward. I designed this thing to be kind of an all-terrain walker, and the triple jointed leg design definitely helps with that. This thing can stand on pretty much any solid ground. And of course, the other consistent with this series, purple, because if I'm making bulky, I'm also making Evo's accent color purple, because I don't know why LEGO stopped doing that. But anyway, moving on to the back. While the back legs look kind of skinny, their main inspiration is shock absorption, so this thing can fire cannons and not either damage the ground that it's standing on, or need to relocate target because the mech itself was kind of pushed back by the force of the cannons. I have the Evo 2.0 nameplates on both of the front legs because a Bricklink seller just gave me those out of the blue, just as a bonus when I ordered something from them. And the construction of this is also pretty solid, with just a bunch of CCBS bones being used to hold two torsos in place, and then any gaps being filled with armor. And I decided to upgrade from the one turret system to a two turret system because I could, and that's pretty much it for the Evo Walker. Next up is the Raka Stealth Machine. Like I said earlier, with the exception of the Evo Walker, the first wave mechs are pretty good sets, but there's one slight problem with the Stealth Machine, and that is its color. Yes, the black and gunmetal works perfectly fine for something called a Stealth Machine, but not only can this thing turn invisible, making its color not matter at all, but it's perfectly in character for Raka to want his equipment to be shiny and gold.
Is it still shiny and gold? I have to protect my trademark, you know.
But anyway, my absurd justifications aside, let's get into the figure. I swapped the blaster out for a Star Wars blaster, which I think turned out pretty well. The lower half of the blaster on the official is used here, and the set art shows it shown off like this, which kind of matches what I have here, but I have it displayed like this just because the instructions said so, and I just kind of OCD like that. I decided to swap out the dinky little claw for something else, and I couldn't decide if I wanted a sword or shield, so I decided why not just go with both. It throws in the reference to Breakout and Brain Attack Raka, and I think it just gives a really nice look to this figure. Speaking of references, I decided to throw in the Raka 3.0 nameplates, because not only am I using transparent green, and it's close enough to the actual color, it's not the same color, but it's also a nice little reference to Raka XL, because he had two of them. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the Raka Stealth Machine. And finally, the dropship. And I'm not going to bother bringing out the original because not only is it buried beneath my 2010 hero sets, but it's really not that comparable anyway. I decided to make it orange because the cockpit pieces only come in orange and lime green, and I decided orange would be much easier to work with. And the main goal was to make kind of a troop transport that can transport all 7 of the heroes. Of course, I decided to put a bunch of flick-fire missiles on here that can be easily aimed because they're just on a standard ball joint. And I like the way the hero core looks on here, it's just kind of a logo. This thing is only built using like 6 CCBS bones and Technic lift arms. I like the way these brick separators turned out, as well as these thrusters. I think they look pretty good. And I'm pretty happy I was able to use these jetpacks, kind of like the original as well. But I actually don't keep this with the rest of my Invasion from Below stuff. Instead, I keep it just kind of hung up in my closet. And something I would like to note is that every hero, with the exception of Raka, comes as a loose minifigure, so these are all duplicates. I did not take these guys out of the mechs to put them in the dropship. A lot of the changes here are kind of obvious, like with many of the eye colors, but the weapons are actually based off of my main Alpha Team revamps, so if you want to know more about the weapons and why I chose them, then go watch that video. But yeah, Bulk is really the only exception. This is just kind of an outdated design, but I was too lazy to find another blaster, so yeah, I guess that's finally everything. So if you enjoyed, make sure you leave a like, comment down below, help push this video in the YouTube algorithm. If you haven't already, subscribe, because the series finale of Me vs. Lego is coming out soon. It's going to be the Invasion from Below Beasts, which are probably some of my favorite mocks that I've done. So until then, take care.